I couldn't be found. I'll buy a big home. The bare necessities of life will come to you. They'll come to you.
Hey everybody, welcome back. The goal of this video is not to persuade you or dissuade you from using or purchasing a certain product. I'm just going to be going over what I have researched, what I have discovered, and my experiences using these products. So we all know that anybody in this hobby who keeps an aquarium has experienced sick fish in some degree, or at least most likely probably will. It's just kind of a fact of the hobby. It comes with it. It's not something that you really think about, unfortunately, when you first get into the hobby. I know I didn't. That was probably the last thing I thought about. I'm sure at some point I thought it might have been a possibility. I mean, your pets get sick sometimes. You take them to the vet, but you don't take the fish to the vet or anything like that. And taking care, I mean, as you have seen my fish room, I've expanded from a single 5-gallon tank to 7 current running tanks. So I have quite a few fish, and over the last year and a half of me being in the hobby, I've run into some issues. You do your best to try to provide the best water quality, the best nutritional diet, the best habitat for your fish, but sometimes that's just not good enough, and sometimes you run into the unexpected infection or parasite or something. And once you recognize that a fish is ill, you attempt to diagnose it. Like, what is going on? What are the symptoms of this illness? In my experience, I have found it rather difficult to diagnose fish. Sometimes it's actually pretty easy. You can see, whether or not their scales are pine coating, whether or not they look bloated, maybe they're constipated. Maybe they have some kind of external wound or parasite or some kind of symptom that would alert you to a specific type of illness or disease or something. Once you figure out the diagnosis, then you go on to figuring out what is the best course of treatment. Salt baths, adding a couple almond leaves, water changes, which I will get into that good point and how important that is. I know anybody in this hobby has heard that over and over again, but I'm going to reiterate it here because I have learned exactly how valuable it is, and I'll get into that later. But and then last but not least, medications. What can I possibly add? I know the first 2 medications I bought were, I'm sure you can guess. So the first time I experienced any kind of fish illness was I had a 30-gallon setup in my living room. I had my Placo, my bristlenose Placo. I had 2 platinum white angel juveniles at the time, so they were an inadequate home. And I decided to add some kind of schooling fish, and I went with red-eye tetras. Probably my biggest mistake right there was not setting up a QD tank and quarantining the tetras. I am confident to this day that majority of the illnesses that I have had experienced in the last year came from those red-eye tetras, and within about a week and a half I started noticing issues. One of them developed what I'm pretty sure is now was body rot, or some kind of body/fin rot. I didn't really know what it was. I didn't notice his fins at the time having any issues, but his body was like, his fins were, or his scales were kind of just like dissolving. I didn't see them like falling off, but it obviously he was having some kind of issue. And so the first thing I treated him with was, actually I treated the entire tank with Melafix and Pimafix, just because I knew that they were rather popular. They were highly suggested in my search online at the time, and I didn't know what the heck he had. And I also knew that they would not adversely affect the biofilter, and that was kind of a big deal. Starting out the hobby, it was drilled into my head how important having a cycled tank. So having that biofilter was extremely important. I didn't want to risk it because I didn't have another tank that I could put these fish in at the time or anything, so I was really worried about it. So I did the recommended treatment, and I even did a second course, and I saw no change. I thought I did at one point, but there was no change, unfortunately. So I kind of chalked it up to maybe the medications were just not doing the right thing. Maybe they were not the right medications for that specific illness. Turns out I was probably right in that. So Melafix, I'm going to be going over kind of what it does and what it does not, and then some interesting facts about both of them at the end that I discovered. So one important thing is that Melafix does treat certain bacterial infections, but it only kills a very narrow range and specific gram-positive bacteria, or at least that's what I have discovered. They kind of market it very well in terms of making it seem like it's a more broad spectrum general cure, but it's not quite that. It's best for treating things like external wounds, other external issues that you may see arise, like fin rot, and as I said, treating specific types of bacteria, which you can't really identify. So I would definitely say that it has a time and a place, but it probably wouldn't be the first option. It seems to be more common that a lot of the issues, at least that I have and what I've seen in other people, they're experiencing certain types of bacterial infections or diseases that are gram negative. Following directions is extremely important, especially for any kind of medication that you're using. Melafix and Pimafix says specifically when to change the water and everything, and you need to make sure you do that. And you might even need to change it more frequently depending on your quarantine hospital filter or your quarantine hospital tank. So in the event that you do have some kind of gram-negative bacterial infection, Melafix will not do anything to help you. You literally would be pouring in your money and getting nothing out of it. You'd be much better off doing your water changes and trying to find a medication that would be suitable for your disease. So in the description, I'm actually going to include a couple charts, diagnosis charts that I have found to be actually rather helpful. They go into more specific symptoms, and I hope that they can help you guys as much as it's helped me identify the different illnesses. Even though with that more detailed, specific information, I have found it rather difficult to diagnose fish sometimes. But most of my research was for Melafix alone. I did run into a couple things with Pimafix. From what I've gathered, a lot of people have not had the best luck with Pimafix either, really helping anything. It's one of the main reasons I don't use it. I've never really had a need for it. Any kind of fungus infection, I'm going to be going for a salt, making sure the temperature is correct in my tank, and then I'm going to be looking for the proper medication to be treating for that. And in the case of it is an actual fungal infection, you're probably going to want to treat the entire tank. Because that's something that is going to be spreading and is going to be everywhere in your tank. So you're going to want to remove any kind of carbon filtration that you have, and making sure that the medication is going through your systems. But thankfully for stuff like that, you have Metroplex and Canoplex, and they work very well from my experiences. So last but not least, some noticeable concerns or interesting topics that I felt were noteworthy to bring up, but there's not a whole lot of credible proof whether or not these things are actual big concerns or not. This is just going off the articles that I've read, and I wouldn't put it past them. It seems reputable, but again, take it with a grain of salt. Regardless, I think it's something that is noteworthy, and it took me a while to find any kind of solid information on these medications, and even then it wasn't the most descriptive, whether or not this would work for my specific illness or not. There were some other issues brought up where in some cases they reported that the bacteria actually, if it did not die, they can actually use these medications as food to obviously populate, so then you would be left with a bacterial bloom, which in turn would consume a lot of oxygen, and thus deprive your fish of an oxygen-rich environment. So that's something else to consider. I think it's extremely rare, at least they said. So again, I don't know how reputable this is, but something very interesting to keep in mind. Last but not least, there were concerns around Pimafix and how it contains clove oil. Now, before you freak out, I know clove oil is used as a very popular way of euthanizing fish these days. I've used it in the past. It seems to be very effective, painless, and quick. But that's for another video maybe. I'm not going to get a whole lot into that. But Pimafix does contain a very refined amount of it, so much so that it will dissolve in the water. It's not something that you should be concerned about if you are using it. by the bottle. If you are following the directions, you should have nothing to worry about. But if you are using a ton of it, and if you are not doing your proper water changes, and if you are not adding carbon, then it may be something to be concerned about, because the chemicals that are used in this will build up, and over time could be problematic for your fish. So that's also something to consider. Maybe if you have an experience with it, comment below, let me know. Maybe all of this is just maybe it's all been proven wrong, or maybe it's been proven right. I'm not 100% sure on these last few topics. I just thought they were very interesting and something to consider, because it's not something that you would think about when buying a product. Is how is it going to interact with your specific environment? You know, maybe you have fish with very specific needs, and if this isn't, you know, they're marketing this as a very wide, broad spectrum general cure, you know, for any type of environment, saltwater or freshwater, you know, you're going to go ahead and assume that this company is selling a product that's going to work for you and not kill your fish. Again, I cannot stress enough, check your water parameters, do water changes, make sure you're using your dechlorinator. Prime is a great one. I use Prime, I use a little bit of stress code, and sometimes I even throw in a little neutral regulator. Thanks for watching. I hope you found this video interesting and maybe helpful. I'm going to list all my sources and those diagnosis charts in the description, so check those out. Let me know what you think. Maybe I'm crazy. Maybe I got all of this wrong, but this is what I found. This is based on my personal experiences too. I definitely think at least Melafix has its place in your medication cabinet, in your fish medication cabinet. But I do not think it should be your first or go-to medication. I think there are much better alternatives out there, and I think you really should just take your time to observe the fish, diagnose it properly, and ask questions. There are a ton of Facebook groups out there. I'll link a couple that I'm actually involved in too, that I comment here and there. And I'll link a couple other YouTubers that I really like, and they have some great advice on stuff like this too. So check them out, check out those groups, and check out the links that I have, and let me know what you think of this video. Was it helpful to you? What are your experiences with sick fish and these chemicals specifically? Have you had really good luck with them? I haven't, so let me know. Thanks. Catch you later.